All right, let's watch that. See, when I look at this, do trans athletes have an unfair advantage? Trans versus cis athletes, I just don't see like how they would have an unfair advantage. Like, I don't see how this could be an actual like conversation that needed to be needed. You know what I mean? Or need to be said.
I know I do. Did you know that every purchase made at the Jubilee shop helps fund this show? If you're looking for ways to support Jubilee and watch more episodes of Middle Ground, make sure you check out our merch at shop.jubileemedia.com. Honestly, every one of your purchases goes such a long way, and we're so grateful for you. Now enjoy this episode.
If you truly believe that trans women have an advantage, even with hormones, then that means you truly believe that trans men have a disadvantage, even with hormones. So the argument that you hear most of the time is against trans women. So does that mean that you're okay with trans men having that disadvantage?
What? So, okay.
Hi, my name is Howard.
So I guess I could see. So, like, let's say, you know, okay. So, I guess I could see maybe what possibly could be the issue, but I'm gonna just watch it before I say anything.
I've been a swimmer for 13 years, and currently I'm on the UCLA triathlon team.
My name's Jing, and I've been swimming
what's up,
for
Rose?
11 years.
Damn,
I'm
what's
Lexi.
like 3
I've
streams
been
in a row?
playing indoor volleyball for
Welcome.
7 years.
How you
I've
doing
been playing
today?
beach volleyball for 3 years.
We're
name is
watching. Do trans athletes have an unfair advantage? Trans versus cis athletes.
I play
We're gonna
women's
have
flat
positive
track, roller
conversation.
derby, and I've been
We're gonna
playing
figure
since
out
the end of
how they feel.
2018.
My name is Mac Beggs. I'm a wrestler. I've been in combat sports for 8 years.
My name is Sydney. I played tennis growing up for 13 years, and now I am
So
a
wait.
fitness coach.
Okay, I was trying to figure out. So those are the trans. This is the cis. Okay.
Trans athletes have an unfair advantage.
Trans athletes have an unfair advantage. I guess it
Step
kind of depends on
forward
how you
if
look
you
at
agree.
it, though. I wouldn't see why they would, though.
When you first think about like transgender athletes, I guess the first thing you think about is, well, biologically, transition usually happens after puberty, right? So if this biologically male athlete goes through puberty, he gets like better bone structure, he has all these skills that he enhances, all these muscle that he puts on, and then he transitions. Yes, your testosterone levels go down, but you're always just gonna have that like things that you've gone through like during puberty that you have after you've transitioned. So I feel like there's always gonna be that advantage.
I think it's
But it said trans athletes have an unfair advantage. So because she was saying, okay, I might have misunderstood, but she was saying that like you go through puberty as a male, right? And you grow like a normal dude, and then you switch and you transition to a female. You still have all that stuff you got from puberty and all that like muscle and build, right? So you have that advantage over like another female cis female athlete. But this is trans athletes have an unfair advantage though, unless they sit down if they disagree. Maybe sit down if you disagree. I thought it was sit down if you agree.
The gender that they are transitioning to. For example, trans women do have somewhat of an advantage. Biological men are naturally born with higher bone density and larger lung capacity and a larger heart, and that's not something that can necessarily be changed with hormones. Of course, this isn't the same for trans men athletes.
For me, it's just on average, guys are typically a little bit stronger, a little bit larger, a little bit taller. So depending on the sport especially, it can give them a large advantage when you're looking at something like that. When it's something like swimming, having that ability to be a little bit larger lung capacity will overall affect that.
That's true.
Can I have the disagreeer step forward?
Okay, so disagreeers sitting down.
Among cisgender men and cisgender women,
Okay, wait,
there
this is
are
confusing though.
naturally differences in
Women can work
their
at muscle too. It's honestly about training rather than body. But that's not always the case though. Like, so for example, their example was swimming, right? You can't just train to have better lungs That's kind of just more biological. Some people have good lungs, some people don't have as good lungs, and it's just biologically true that men are born with, you know, bigger lungs, taller build, bigger build, and that can have a bigger advantage in some different sports. Not all sports, and there's definitely women that are born with, you know, big lungs and maybe taller build and, you know, easy to build muscle and stuff like that. But it is just like known that men just naturally are known to have those bigger builds and those bigger things. It's just kind of like how biology works, you know what I mean? So, and that's what they're kind of saying. It's like it's not that women can't get to that point. It's just that it's just known like that. Okay, but like the majority of women, you know, are not going to start out playing, I don't know, football and be at the point of a guy that's been doing football at the same amount of time. You know what I mean?
Anatomy, in their hormonal
That's just an
levels,
example,
in their height, bone structure, all that stuff. Like any cisgender woman compared to another might have a different body type. Yeah. Some women are naturally very strong.
That's true.
If you take the advantage, which I think in most cases is the hormones, and if you compare the blood work and you're just looking at that, if they're on the same level, in my opinion, there just isn't an advantage, because when you grow up playing sports, some people are good at sports, some people aren't.
The problem I see with this argument is that there's a large group of people that no matter what I do in a sport will always automatically assume that I have an advantage. But they're not taking into account hours that I put into practice, hours that I put into weightlifting to become a better athlete. Roller derby is probably 90+% cis women. I get my ass handed to me. Like, yes, I am tall, and I can see that that can be an advantage in some sports, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that I have an advantage.
Oh yeah. What we usually hear in the like news and like politics and stuff is about trans women, just because they're in so much prominence, because they are winning. Like, I can't remember what her name is right now, but she was a powerlifter. She is a powerlifter. I think she went to Tokyo Olympics, and she's transgender.
Oh, sick.
And they're winning by like a large amount like of weight.
If you truly believe that
it's about practicing what you do with your body type and time. Oh yeah, 100%. But I think they're more so. I think the way I look at the question is like, if you put a cis female and a transgender female, and you put them together and statistically like watch them, and if they both do the same amount of exercise, the same amount of practice, and they both do the same amount of like games or whatever, and whatever sport they're doing, most likely that transgender female is probably going to have an advantage in some areas, right? And I think that's how I look at the question. It's like, if you took two and put them against each other at the exact same pace in whatever sport they're doing and with the exact same training, they're most likely gonna have an advantage. But that's not always the case, because like, you know, like she said, you know, it is about practice, and it's about how much work you're able to put into it. You could be, you know, you could be a you can be a cis female going against cis men that you know, and completely destroy them. You know, it depends. It just it does.
Women have an advantage even with hormones. Then that means you truly believe that trans men have a disadvantage even with hormones. So the argument that you hear most of the time is against trans women. So does that mean that you're okay with trans men having that disadvantage?
When I was like going through high school,
you know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of Tyler from I don't know if you ever played the Life is, like, it's made by the same devs as Life is Strange. It's called what was it? Fuck, I forgot what it's called. But he reminds me of Tyler a lot. He's also trans.
Wrestle against females. I had to suppress both my hormones
in
my body.
Oi.
And I was still able to beat the men too, with my like levels.
How swag are you doing today?
Like, and I cut 15 pounds a week. Like that was crazy.
Yeah.
But like that's what I'm saying. Like the body is like a shell, and what we do every single day in the practices and the like life lessons that we get like living 40 years on this earth. You know, we just try to live life the best we can.
Yeah.
He said bad
Trans
word.
athletes should have a separate category in certain sports.
Trans athletes should have a separate category in certain sports? No. No, there's no that completely defeats. That's going based off of like, oh yeah, there is definitely a difference, and we should take that difference and build on it, and like, oh yeah, trans people should be in their own category, and stay away from it. Like, I don't think that should be the case. I think everyone, it should be equal. You know what I mean? It should be like everyone has the same, can train just as hard. Everyone can be just as good. You know what yeah, letting them in with them. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, it defeats the whole purpose of being equal. Like, you know what I mean? Like that. No, that's stupid.
I don't want to
10,
say
I'm
that they
doing
should be in a
swag.
completely
Nice.
different category, just because socially
That's
and
really good.
legally, yes, they are that gender that they transition to, and putting them in another category just seems, from hindsight, seems wrong. But as an athlete, like in the sporting world, it just does seem a little bit unfair if you classify them under the same group, I guess.
Yeah, I think that there definitely are some sports where your physical ability makes a much larger impact on the sport
I mean,
itself. Wrestling
I
would
see
be
that
one
point.
of them. Swimming, track, something like that. But if you look
Separate
at
but
NASCAR as
equal,
a
yeah,
sport,
right.
I believe that anyone can then go and do that sort of sport because that's
Okay,
more
but
of a technique.
I see their point, and it kind of goes off that thing where it's like, yeah, okay, sometimes they do have an advantage on some sports that is probably not always fair, but at the same time, it's like have a little bit of unfair versus completely like oppressing trans people. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, it just feels wrong, and it's just like, you know what I mean?
If you look at other sports like golf, it requires a lot of technique and a lot of strength. Plus, video games is now starting to make a massive
Exactly,
rise. So
yeah.
all of those could
They're-
definitely
okay.
have both genders in it with no problem.
Oh,
For
okay,
swimming,
that's what he's
especially,
saying.
if I were to decide that
I'm
I
about
would
to
like
say, like, there's no
transition and
difference
then
when it comes to
start
video games.
all of the hormone therapy for for a year or so, then obviously I would probably lose some muscle mass and I would slow down in my swimming. But I don't know if that slowdown would necessarily be enough to make it fair.
Wait,
for
are these all athletes? I didn't even realize. Wait, oh yeah, they are athletes. I completely just disregarded the fact that they are all athletes.
the cis
I thought they were
females
just normal people
that I'd be
talking
competing
about
against.
a topic. I'm so stupid.
The danger of it is that you're possibly
thought-
outing somebody.
I thought they were just all
In
normal people
America
talking about a
alone,
topic.
There's several places that it's still extremely dangerous to be an open transgender person. To say
Dude,
that you can't.
That's actually true though, and when you look like to buy houses, when you go to buy houses, there's actually a category or like a thing to go buy, like in certain areas where it's like, oh, this is safe for LGBTQ. This is not safe for LGBTQ plus. It's crazy, man. Like the fact that oh, wait, what? You know what I mean? That's like the mind blowing.
perform unless
How
you're
can
in
those
this group.
athletes-
There's just a lot
I don't
of safety
know.
reasons for that individual that it's not good.
I don't know.
Second thing, where does the line draw? You're saying swimming, and you had mentioned earlier that like height was an advantage. Did I go through puberty as a male?
Why is that a
Yes.
category? I know,
But
like that's
in order
fucked,
to
man.
say that I have an
That's
advantage because I was
fucked.
born with testosterone is the equivalent.
The fact
of
that
saying
has to be a category is
oh, I
just
went
sad.
to this gym one time and I lifted and I had a protein shake, so I should never have to take a protein shake again because it's in my body. And the medicine I'm taking stops that testosterone. I don't have that anymore. Like my entire body, my entire mind, my entire way of thinking is different because of the medicine I'm on.
Are we going to start making categories for cis athletes? Okay, you're in a category if you're 5'9" and above. 5'7" to 5'9".
But that does happen.
5'5" to 5'7". Weights, like all of those things. It's
I mean,
like,
in certain sports.
exactly
But, like,
where is the line
the
drawn?
They
UFC,
do
that
have
happens.
weight categories
Well, yeah, for
like-
certain
yeah.
sports. of
Yeah,
course, but
okay,
I mean,
yeah.
I think just generally,
She was thinking
every
the same thing.
person is different. And like you're saying, like the cis women that were getting cut because they're naturally.
I think
you
saying
know,
all sports is such a general term. I think they should have focused on certain sports. You know what I mean? Or they should like talk about certain sports and use that as an example, you know, for trans versus cis athletes. I think just a general term of sports. I mean, it's such a wide spectrum of activities. I mean, you can go from video games all the way to football. You know what I mean? It can.
more
I think it can
athletic
get
to
a
some
little
standard that's
congested.
set. It's like
Or even the varying levels of testosterone. Oh,
Exactly.
you're in this box, so now you're in this league.
yeah.
I wasn't by any chance trying to discriminate against them and try and put them in their own category
Yeah.
in that way.
Dude, no
It was
one thinks
more
that.
just by a performance standpoint. We already
Okay,
do
I'm just gonna say
separate
real quick.
everyone.
If you're going into this conversation and you're already assuming that people are gonna like discriminate or put people in a box or anything like that, you're just stupid. I think you should go into these conversations like, and he shouldn't be thinking this because I think you go into these conversations talking about these subjects with an open mind, and you go into it talking about these things, and you should just, you know, you should be willing to learn. You should also be willing to give your opinion without having to be scared that people are going to take that wrong. It's the same thing with talking about any subject.
Into their own different levels. You don't have Olympic athletes coming and competing at state club levels.
Doesn't that defeat the purpose of trying to become a better athlete then?
If they're trying to work up to a goal, I'm not entirely sure.
So if you're good enough, you're going to be singled out and have to go. There's no proof of any trans athlete that is
You shouldn't be
number
discriminated.
one
I
in any
agree.
category right now.
You shouldn't.
Yeah, that's because I think they're being held back so much by just like the media and everything that you don't get to see their chance to shine.
Like that
in
one guy's shirt a
sense.
lot. The
What
guy
would you
with
guys
brown
say
hair.
to like
Oh, like the pink,
transgender
yellow,
people who
and blue shirt?
transitioned before puberty?
In that instance, I think I would
Kinda nice shirt, I
take
like
a
it.
step back and kind of look at it more of at like my own argument, like it was a scientifically based on like puberty and stuff. So I would like consider like that would be different, but my mindset just coming into this, I mean, I think that most people go through transitioning like after puberty, or it's like encouraged
more
to.
common.
Yeah.
For me, it's more if they end up just fitting the category, regardless if they do it before puberty or after puberty. If they have the right amount of testosterone, they did all the right testing all beforehand, then why not? Then you don't even need to separate them. They might as well just compete as a trans athlete.
Yeah.
Hormone testing is fair.
What is hormone testing, though? Wait, I don't know what that is. Hold on. Hormone testing. Oh God, I just got a bunch of Okay, what? We use hormone testing to detect and evaluate hormone imbalances that may be making you sick. We often conduct homemade hormone testing using a blood sample. So wait, what's the point of the hormone testing though? In like the athletes like world. Do you guys know?
Like the Olympics tests, college level tests. I know, like in Texas, at my high school level, the UIL organization, they tested, and you know, it's to keep everybody safe. And I think it's okay to test for hormone levels, and if that's the ultimate, like, you know, conversation here is that we're looking in people for hormone levels as a competition, then why separate men and women? Why are we talking about men and women? We just strictly talk about hormone levels then.
Yeah.
So there is varying levels of testosterone blockers that you can be on. I chose to be on one of the higher ones, but I can guarantee you that someone like me is going to get less of a chance to be cut than a cis female because my hormones will stay the same, whereas a cis is going to be all over the place depending on all sorts of variables.
Yeah.
I personally think that the hormone testing is really important, and just coming from like a fitness perspective, like fitness, bodybuilding, like that sort of athletics. For me, I take a lot of pride in the fact that my testosterone levels are within the normal range of a cisgender male. Obviously, performance enhancers, right, steroids, extra testosterone, all those things are thrown around among cisgender men in the fitness world. to, enhance our performance, get bigger, all that sort of thing. And for me, being able to say like, no, I am within the normal range of a cisgender man. The muscle I'm putting on, I'm naturally putting on. I don't have an advantage over anybody else that's in that normal range. So I think for me, like, it's just really important because I'm like proud of that. And I think if you just assume that a trans person has an advantage because they're taking testosterone, it's kind of like, well, what about cis men that take testosterone to get bigger and that sort of thing? So
You're like automatically throwing this group of people into this category that they don't fit in, like because I mean, like, let's say you're doing competition that doesn't allow steroids, you're automatically like, oh yeah, just because you're trans and you're taking testosterone medication or whatever, you're automatically like, oh, you're in this category of other cis men that take testosterone to the higher levels to get an advantage, when that's not the same for all trans men. You can't just throw people in a category and it's like, oh yeah, boom, you're this because of this.
Testing for hormones is
saying, I'm
fine.
just looking
The
at the
issue is what you're going to do with that, because
They all look nice,
as
though.
I said earlier, it's really hard to put someone in a box because
don't
there's
blame you.
always averages here and there for male and female, but especially when you start making your way up in the competition pool, those norms go out the window, and it then gets even more difficult to write legislation on what a male can compete in and what a female can compete in for if their hormone levels are outside of this said box.
I'm fine as a trans athlete being tested. If I need to prove to the world that like I'm the better athlete at the end of the day, go ahead and take my medical information. I don't care. Like I'm just trying to live my truth. That's all I'm trying to do.
A cis female that's competing in a high level of track might have a normal male testosterone, so now are you going to kick them out because now their testosterone levels are too high?
That's true.
And that's where legislation can get really difficult to write.
That's true.
I am
That's a fair
treated
point.
fairly by my fellow athletes.
I think that's highly depends on your environment and who you
I joined
are
roller
around.
derby only like 4 months after I decided to transition and get onto hormones. Everyone from the beginning was very accepting. Roller derby is almost too accepting from my experience, because I forgot how bad the real world can be sometimes. Not everyone is going to be, but my personal experience
That's a good
has
thing,
been
though.
very positive.
Growing up, in my club, I trained with my brother, and we were like kind of in the distance group. So it was mostly guys there, and they never really saw me as like she's a girl, you know. They just saw me as like another competitor, and it was always just fun, like racing, and like it just made me grow up love being in the sporting world and being competitive.
I think if you can prove yourself in
I
any
definitely get a lot of
sport
hate like online,
or anything,
but I've never personally gotten any like issues. Like everyone that's in the gym
there's no
is
point to
just trying to get
discriminate
better
at all.
for the most part. Obviously,
It's all
that
about just
kind
if
of
you can do what they
communal
can do, you know,
idea is
then you
really
do it.
like
All right, cool, man.
helpful as far as me not getting so much hate.
Lonely times.
When in high school, when I came out like prominently, everybody knew that I was trans, and there was a coach that exploited me in a lawsuit to try to ban me in high school. Yeah.
Sorry. Wow.
What the
I was
fuck?
on hormone blockers, and it was suppressing my estrogen and testosterone. And even though everybody knew who I was, when it came to like after junior high, when he did that, it was so aggressive. Parents would scream from the stands that they wanted to hurt me as being a trans man, and just in my life in general. My family
Jesus.
doesn't come from much, and we work very hard. And I'm like the first generation to try to become something. So, I mean, the haters.
I will for you, man. Yeah.
Sports should be gender neutral.
Well, she is female, so
Your body's a vessel. It shouldn't matter whether you're male
She's
or
trans
female,
female.
because I feel like the sport, like sports in general, is growing. Especially there's this like little girl in wrestling. She wrestled in the junior division in wrestling and nationals in the 106-pound division, and she kicked all the guys' asses.
Yeah.
I was like, go for you. So I feel like as the sports grow,
Okay.
as we're evolving as a society,
Well, if we're talking
and we're
about
being
just
very
gender, like as a whole, sports should be gender neutral. I think some sports shouldn't, because there is a gap in a lot of sports, like with female versus male. There is a huge gap in some sports. There just is. Like football, when you're just literally, you got these gigantic dudes, the majority are huge guys that are just like, destroying each other and hurting each other bad. And then you got, the majority of females is not all like that. You know what I mean? Like, I just think, just looking at, if I'm looking at a football field and I'm seeing like 6'4" dudes, 250 pounds of like muscle versus, and then I just see like half his size. I mean, of course, I mean that's an over exaggeration, but you get what I mean. It's like you see that and you're just like, you should probably be careful. Maybe don't go full ham, dude. You know what I mean?
progressive.
I mean, it's the same if you had like dudes that are in that like smaller category. You're just like, dude, you're gonna die. You're gonna die if you go on that field, man. You know what I mean? It'd be the same thing. You know what I mean?
It should.
But again, there is some
some
females out there that do,
we talk about gender neutral sports?
I actually
build muscle like
rode
that and are tall and are
showed equestrian for 10 years.
definitely built for
and
that.
I was like one of two men at the time, and then there are other roller derby leagues that are co-ed, and they work fine. Like women are going up against men, and they're bashing each other, and they're like going at it. There's a lot of things, and I feel like sports are one of these things where it's like it has to be this or it has to be that.
Yeah, that's
the
true.
same as gender. It has to be this or it has to be that, and it's not.
But that's like saying like, and it's what I'm saying. It goes back to the whole like general of sports. It's like, of course, not all sports should be gender neutral, not all sports shouldn't be gender neutral, right? Like, of course, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you're going to die. But like, there is a couple sports out there that maybe should focus more on that, on being careful with that. But there's a lot of sport. I would say the majority of sports that are completely fine with having both genders, being able to attend and be in the same, league or whatever.
For me,
especially with like sports like
start
gaming
seeing with this
or
is when
golf,
we
which
start
is
looking
what the
at
guy said
scholarships.
earlier.
And for
Yeah,
college
of
level,
course.
if you start combining the sports by gender, then scholarships are always given to the top athletes. What happens to the females that now need that scholarship necessarily to go to college, but now you've just all thrown them into one category? It all of a sudden breaks that whole opportunity for them to maybe even go to college, because now they've been training to be able to provide for themselves in college. And now, since it's all one level playing field, maybe they can beat the males, but on average, they probably won't be able to, especially depending on the sport.
And
Trans athletes aren't even getting scholarships either. I'm a two-time state champion in high school. Didn't get a scholarship.
What?
I just now been able to get my scholarship 3 years into being on a male team.
Yeah. But we're talking like hypothetically, in the perfect world, if sports was gender neutral.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's all hypothetical.
Yeah.
Everything's hypothetical in a sense because we don't have enough analytical data.
I feel as though making all sports gender neutral in that way, there is still some biological benefits to being
You want me to make an edit right now?
born a man versus being born a female.
Edit of
just
what I think
can't
it is.
get over the fact that there are going to be all these very obvious differences, not advantages, but just differences in if we had gender neutral sports.
It's not going to be a co-ed team versus an all-male team. It's going to be a co-ed team versus a co-ed team. So I feel like there would still be strategy that would have to be played into it.
I'm thinking more like individual.
That's true.
Yeah, individual. And I could see like.
But that,
where
I
you're
think
coming
more
from that,
individual.
And you mentioned wrestling earlier. Just the whole combat sport community in general does have a long.
Is it an edit
to
of me,
go.
or just an edit
Definitely
of something
not completely
else?
Supportive of trans athletes, but in a sense of like when I've noticed in just like studying of how like female athletes are and male athletes are. The best
Only
like,
one post on the
MMA
fan account.
female
What the hell?
athletes, cis, have male training partners, and most of the time, like they're kicking their ass unless like they're training for, or unless they have somebody that's better than them to push them, and then that's just making them a better athlete.
In my opinion, like kids are extremely accepting. I have two gorgeous kids, and it's so cool to have them play on a playground and explain to their new friends who I am, and like watch them do that. And their kids, like their friends, will be like, "Oh, okay," you know. But you talk to an adult, and they're like,
Yeah.
you know, because you have this instilled, like what you were saying, this instilled education from the time you were born. That has basically said that no, this is wrong.
It's
You have to
also
have this group. You have to have.
It's also because it's like kids nowadays grow up in a generation that is that has way more LGBTQ and are way more accepting. You know what I mean? So it's like kids grow up in this world that is more accepting. They're gonna be more accepting regardless, unless they grow up in a home that is not accepting, right? Adults, on the other hand, they grew up in a different generation and have already formulated opinions on these things. And sadly, the majority of adults do not like to change their opinion for some stupid reason, right? They don't like to grow. They think after they turn 20 something, they're good, they're done, and their opinions will never change. And that's not everybody, but that's a lot of adults. And I've met a lot of people like that form this opinion, usually older, like into the late 30s, 40s. You know what I mean? With child torture camp. Yeah, true. Yo, true. But you know what I mean? It's like, for some reason, I mean, I've had arguments with 40-year-olds in my Twitch chat about like the most stupidest things that I have an opinion on. And it's like, I'm like mind blown. It's like, dude, what? It's like you have this opinion on, it doesn't even make any sense. You know what I mean? You're just you know, it's not like that anymore, or it never was. You know what I mean?
This group
Actually, that specific argument was over video game toxicity. And basically he was saying, like, well, I'm not gonna go on a rant about it, but he was basically saying that, like, let's say you talk shit in a video game at the end of a game, a COD lobby or something, you're automatically a bad person because you're toxic and you're just creating toxicity and negativity, right? And if you do that, you're a piece of shit. And we were talking about certain streamers that he would call a piece of shit and are trashy people because you talk shit in a COD lobby. And it made no sense because he was just generalizing this entire thing. And me, I was like, that makes no sense. Like, you talk shit because it's a fun game, and it doesn't make you a shitty person. And then he said I was like creating a terrible environment for my streams, and I was portraying this terrible whatever.
To have this group,
Fucking
like,
fossils.
I do talk about it a lot with people, but I have to understand that it's not my responsibility to educate everyone. Like, I have to be able to cross that line where it's like, mentally, I can't do it anymore. Like, I need to step back for a little bit. But like you said, like, ask questions. Like, if you're genuine, as long as I know it's not malicious,
Yeah.
ask a question. Don't freaking ask
the
me about my
best thing you can
genitals.
do.
Like,
Yeah.
that's none of your freaking
Be
business.
respectful. I just want to know, like, have you guys ever
man.
had, like, you were talking about your scholarship. Do you guys feel like you have less opportunity in the sense of, like, competitions
That's a
and
good question.
like, scholarships just because you guys are trained?
Just generally,
When
do you have
COVID
less
started, roller
opportunity?
derby since then has not gotten back together. So I lost my sport, which was something that was like really kept my brain in focus and like centered me.
That
So I got into
sucks.
powerlifting. I lift
Oh,
because I
shit.
enjoy it, but I don't even try and compete just because people are
know,
gonna
like, the
like.
backlash.
I don't want the backlash on it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's gotten for me to that point a little bit. A couple of years ago, it was like all too much, and it took my coach was fortunate and supported me through like my academic journey, and he was like, if you feel like you can't do this anymore, like as long as you got good grades, like, and when we're being asked, like in high school, like when we're like gonna be competing on a high level.
I wonder how old he
you
is.
know, the first thing that comes out of a recruiter,
Because he talks about high school a lot.
recruiter's mouth is what are your grades, not how good you are.
I mean, I think I just learned a lot. Like, I loved hearing all of y'all stories, and I feel sad that you guys like feel oppressed sometimes and don't even try. You know?
I hope this educates people.
Yeah.
Sadly, honestly, I don't think it's gonna do a lot. Like, for people that watch, because it's not actually a bad thing. Sort of, fucking god, LoveBoat, you're a fucking great streamer. Thanks, man. But I think most people are open. Because I think right now we're at a point where it's either it's one or two sides. It's never oh, I disagree, but I'm open to learning. It's like either A, I'm open and agree, or B, I'm completely closed off and disagree. It's never like a middle ground where they can maybe learn something, like middle ground, like, you know what I mean? And it sucks because that's like the community, or not the community, but like that's like the world we live in right now. It's so closed off from people that are different, and you know, even me being black, it's sadly racism is even still a thing, and you know, oppression is still a thing, and it fucking sucks, man. You know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy. And now it's like, you know, like us as a community, like, even, you know, what am I trying to say? It's like we can come together as a community and we can hold, like, we can be there for each other, but at the end of the day, that's not gonna do a lot just in the grand scheme of things. It's not gonna, you know, it's not gonna get you a scholarship, which fucking sucks. And it's like, what do we do then?